Wabbit season. I say it's duck season, and I say fire.
Hi YouTube, this is Raven. I'm a survivor of a 16-year marriage to a covert narcissist, and now I'm divorced from a covert narcissist. And I've done a series of videos called Narcissists Are Ridiculous, and normally it's a very funny series. I don't know how funny this particular video is going to be. It's more on the ridiculous side. But if you've been around narcissists or you've read up on narcissists, you'll realize that they have a very rich fantasy life. Sam Vaknin calls it magical thinking, that narcissists, imagine greater things for their life, that grandiose plans, a sense of grandiosity, that, that they're like, the long lost prince or whatever, but, somehow they were raised by the commoners and, they're just waiting to be elevated, to that station in life. And the two narcissists that I've known in my life, one, she participates in magical thinking. That's my rooster again. He's making noise. She participates in magical thinking. She goes to Renaissance festivals a lot, and she dresses up in period costume, and she acts like, she's from England, even though she's from the South. All of a sudden, she has a British accent. And, and she loves doing that, and that's, something she likes to do a lot. But, my narc takes it one step further. He doesn't go to Renaissance festivals, but he goes to Scottish games. And he pretends that he's Scottish, that he has Scottish heritage, even though there's not one drop of Scottish blood in this man. But he pretends that he's Scottish. And he leads people to believe that he participates in the Scottish games, but he doesn't. If you've ever seen Scottish games, the people who participate in them are real athletes. I mean, they're out there, they're doing something called the caber toss, which is this basically a telephone pole. I mean, it's this long, 200-pound telephone pole that they're heaving and throwing it, So you have to be an athlete to do this. My narc is not an athlete in any way, shape, or form. But he leads people to believe that he's out there throwing these telephone poles. But what had happened early on in our marriage, there was one weekend that I saw that there was a Scottish Games taking place near our home. And I thought, hey, that'd be kind of cool. Let's go check it out. I've never been to the Scottish Games. So we went there, and we're passing by a tent. And one of the tents at the games had a sign that said, if you have this particular last name, and it had a whole slew of last names, that you might be part of clan such and such. And he looks and he's like, oh, that's my name. I'm Scottish. I'm part of this clan. And, he has a very vanilla last name. It's a very common last name. It's not necessarily Scottish. It could be anything. But all of a sudden, he was Scottish. And he wanted to join the clan. And, this led to, he joined the clan, and he wanted a kilt, he wanted the special shoes, the socks, the wool socks, the flashes, which is material that goes on the outside of the socks, the hat. The whole getup was $1,000. I mean, $1,000 for this getup, that he's going to wear to the games, to pretend he's Scottish. And and so then every weekend that I didn't have Army Reserve training, because, he called that my hobby, which the Army is not a hobby, okay? It's not a hobby. If you want to take up a hobby, the armed forces, not a hobby. But, he would talk about my hobby, and that he had his hobby. Well, his hobby took up a lot of money, because now we're having to go to these games almost every weekend that I didn't have Army Reserves. He wanted to go to the Scottish Games. But he wasn't participating in the games. He would go and sit in the hospitality tent for this Scottish clan and, sit around and, sip scotch, and talk with the other, old farts that are sitting around there. Well, he takes it one step further and decides he wants to be the commissioner of the Scottish Games, even though he's not Scottish. So the guy who was in charge of that particular clan's hospitality tent was more than happy to give it to him. So now he was the commissioner over 5 states. And he's Still not Scottish. And we're having to go like almost every weekend, spend hundreds of dollars to go stay in a hotel, to go to these games. And, now because I'm the commissioner's wife, I'm supposed to go along too and stand in this tent and say, welcome to our clan, and sorry, I've had a cold that I can't seem to shake. But, I had to go along, and it's like, I didn't want to do this. All I had wanted to do was to go to a Scottish Games one weekend because I thought it would be fun. But, like all narcissists, he takes things to the ridiculous end, not just doing things, a little bit, but we're going to take it all the way to its logical conclusion. So he starts doing these games, and a lot of people decorate their tents at the game. He's running the hospitality tent. But by decorating, all you have to do is you just put a tablecloth down, you put down books for people to sign in, that they came by the hospitality tent, maybe a couple flags and a banner. That's it. But he got this idea. He was going to make this contraption. Now, if you've heard my video before where he made the massage table, he's making this contraption out of PVC pipes that you get from the hardware store. And it was supposed to be this thing that's going to hold like 4 or 5 flagpoles, like 20 feet up in the air on this tent, and a banner. And now this is a tent that's only 8 by 8 feet. It's not a huge tent. It's, it's an 8 by 8 foot tent. And the thing is so heavy, it's going to pull the tent over. And, if a wind came up, a real stiff breeze came up, it would blow it down too. So it was a hazard for, people walking by. And it would take him hours to put it together because he was assembling this thing like an erector set, or a Lego set, where he's having to put the PVC pipes in, and it would take him hours. He would get to the games at 8 o'clock in the morning, and it's 12 o'clock, and the tent is still not set up, even though people want to come in, the hospitality tent. And he doesn't have it set up. And I would say, why are you doing all this? And he would get so mad at me. I've gotten compliments on this. I've gotten compliments on my setup. Other people want me to build something like this for them. Well, he never built anything for anyone else like that. I don't think he ever got compliments. He was just saying that because he was so stubborn that was the way he was going to do it. Well, he came up with these, what he calls collapsible flagpoles. And he made them out of copper piping, which, copper is not cheap. So he's spending hundreds of our dollars on these things, where they were collapsible flagpoles, where he took pieces of copper and he put bungee cords inside of them, and he made these flagpoles. And he got it in his mind, and his parents convinced him that you could make money off this, you could be rich, because selling these collapsible flagpoles to all these people at the Scottish Games. So the weekend that I had my appendix out, and I'm at the house, I haven't been able to clean the house, I haven't been able to cook, I have a 6-month-old and a 3-year-old to watch after, and I'm recovering from surgery. Instead of him taking care of me, he was like, no, I have to make the prototypes for these flagpoles because my dad's going to come and he's going to help me patent it and I'm going to sell it. We're going to be rich, because that's the magical thinking. So I'm laying upstairs, with his whole family of flying monkeys are there, his brother, his sister, his brother's wife, her kid at the time, my in-laws, and I'm laying upstairs because I've been ordered to go rest. But I can hear my kids crying in the other room, and they're downstairs watching TV. They're watching The Masters, while they're drinking wine on my couch, spilling wine on my couch. And I'm laying there like I just want these people to leave. And I go downstairs, and Narc, instead of, instructing them to help, because he had asked them to come help, he's in the garage tinkering around in the garage making these flagpoles. And I said, what are you doing? He's like, it's important. It's important that I make these flagpoles because we're going to be rich when I make these. And I was like, oh, make your family leave. They can't stay here and drink wine on my couch. They got to go, if they're not going to do anything. So, he gets them up and he makes them do stuff. And, and I'm sitting there at the computer. I decide that, if I can't rest, I might as well work because I'm a transcriptionist. And if I don't work, I don't get paid. And I'd had a whole week of no work. And, we had a mortgage to pay. Plus, we had the IRS breathing down our necks at that time because he had decided not to pay income taxes. And they had put a lien on our house. So I'm in there typing. And my mother-in-law comes in there, puts her hands on my shoulder. And it's creepy. And it's, it's almost like claws or talons. And she puts them on you need to rest. Go rest. I know that this is soothing for you. Work is comforting. I'm like, work is not comforting for me. I work because I have to. I have bills to pay, lady. I'm typing my fingers to the bone because your son doesn't want to pay income taxes. Another crazy thing that he's done besides this whole Scottish thing. But in addition to that, he came up with this scam while he's doing the Scottish Games. It was a sword raffle. And supposedly it was to raise money for the clan. But the money that he made off the raffle, he spent maybe a little bit on food for the hospitality tent and for a couple decorations, but for the most part, he pocketed all this money. And he made hundreds of dollars each season that he did this, the sword raffle. He would buy a sword wholesale from a friend of his, and then he would raffle the sword off. And he would make hundreds and hundreds of dollars, if not thousands. And, one year he did legitimately give the sword away. He, drew a name out of the fishbowl. But then the next year, our Sunday school class teacher came to the games. And lo and behold, our Sunday school class teacher won the sword raffle. Out of thousands of people who had bought a ticket, somehow he won. And I was like, that's strange. He's like, no, it's legitimate. It's legitimate. Well, then the next year, I asked him, because I didn't go to the games where he drew the name. And I said, oh, who won the sword this year? Oh, I gave it to so-and-so because he'd helped me with the games all this season. And I said, wait a minute, you gave it to somebody? You didn't draw the name out of the hat? And he's like, no, I just gave it to him. I said, well, that's a scam. That's you. All these people paid money for a chance to win the sword. And he's like, well, they did have a chance. I said, well, no, not if you didn't draw, from the names. You just gave it to somebody. Oh, it's legitimate. It's legitimate. So I don't know what he did with the hundreds of dollars that he made every year. Who knows? Maybe that went into his secret bank account that he had that I found out later. But, he had magical thinking. And when he found out from his aunt, when she retired, she did all this genealogy in the family, and oh my God, he's not Scottish. And he spent days, there was like several days, he was depressed. I mean, he was really, really depressed. But then he got over it. He, put his skirt back on and dressed in drag and went back out, to do the Scottish Games. But, he had that magical thinking where we were always going to be rich. Somehow, he had this thing he was working on with his boss. They had this program, this computer program that was supposed to be able to predict the stock market. And if you just predicted the stock market, you would make millions of dollars. And they were going to start this website where people paid, hundreds of dollars a year for a membership to Wealth University. And they would be able to get stock advice. Well, that was just a scam that his boss had come up with. But, sorry, my voice is going. It's the same thing. He got involved with Quickstar, which Quickstar is a form of Amway. And he got involved with that, wanting to sell it, and he was going to be rich off that too. He had predicted he was going to be making six figures, in 6 months. Well, he did Quickstar for about 3 or 4 weeks and then gave it up. But, it was that magical thinking. It's the same deal. His dad had asked him and his brother years ago to quit their jobs because he was going to start a company to flip houses. Even though his dad knew nothing about flipping houses, his dad was not a contractor, was not a real estate agent, knew nothing about it, but he had this idea that when he retired, his sons were going to work for him. They were going to flip houses. And, and then, that blew up. And then, he had this idea that he and his sons were going to start their own bank. I'm like, oh my God, it just, the magical thinking that these people have, they just assume it's like, if you can think it, you can do it. See it, be it, do it. And so he always had this idea that we were going to be rich. But the thing is that I think narcissists don't realize that the people who really are successful in life, they don't just fall into it. It takes years of hard work and dedication to be successful and not magical thinking. But narcissists are always magical thinkers, and they want something for nothing, and they think that they're better than they are, but they're not. They're narcissists, and they're ridiculous. Well, that's all for now. Be vigilant, be safe, take care.